So we've all used wet wipes like these. They're especially convenient for parents on the go, but could this quick fix for your messy child actually harm their health? Well, a new study suggests wet wipes contribute to allergies. This Northwestern University study found wet wipes may disrupt the skin's natural barrier and leave it more vulnerable for allergens, those things we're allergic to penetrate through the skin and into the body. Why is this important? Well, food allergies have risen by 20% in the past 20 years. That's a lot. What happens with these wipes? Well, I'm going to let you're the expert on the skin, but by disrupting this barrier, it's setting you up to develop more allergies, correct?
Correct. So the idea is when you don't have access to water and you use one of these wipes that has a detergent on it, it actually has a fairly harsh lathering agent. One of the most common ones is something called SLS, or sodium lauryl sulfate. And what happens is that can be so irritating that it strips the natural seal of your skin that's meant to be there to keep the outside world out. And the thought of these researchers at Northwestern is that possibly when you use these wipes and then you disrupt the barrier, these kids are then exposed to normal irritants that they would otherwise come in contact with, like dust and foods on their moms or their caregivers' hands, and then that allows that to enter the skin, and the skin sees it in a way that it was never ever meant to. It triggers an allergic reaction, and subsequently when the kids eat those foods, they develop a food allergy. So we really think there's a link. It's more common in kids who already have allergic tendencies like eczema, asthma, and other allergies as well. So I think it's a really interesting thing because I'm certainly guilty of this, of just throwing the wipes in the diaper bag and you don't have time to wash it off with water, but that residue can be so disruptive to the skin.
Well, and that's the key. When you're doing your wash, you add that detergent. What do? You let it go through the rinse cycle.
Exactly.
And that's the key, that when you use these wipes, ideally, you want to be rinsing it, you want to be washing it off with water.
Are there any other options when if you need to grab some wipes and say, when I'm on the go, I want to have something to use, and you have like all of these options at the store, which one should you pick?
Well, I agree. There are going to be situations where it may not be practical to rinse off with water. So one thing would be to look for wipes that don't have surfactants like sulfates in them. So SLS is the most kind of common culprit that we talk about, but anything if you're looking on the label and it has some form of a sulfate, you may want to steer clear of that, especially if you're a kid or you already have allergic tendencies. And then the other tip from this study that I thought was really interesting was it was just a really good reminder to caregivers to make sure they're washing their hands with soap and water, because that's how those irritants get transferred to the kid. It's from the skin being disrupted, and then maybe you have food on your hands, you have something on your hands, you touch them, and then that's how they become sensitized.
And that's not something that people probably think about. You think about washing your hands because you don't want to give your kid a cold or a bacterial infection, but you probably don't think, oh, I may increase the probability that my kid has certain allergies.
Yeah, and I think in the context of these wipes.
Well, it's sort of a little confusing because there's other studies that show, and we talked about it, that if you have pets at home, for example, for the kids, that you're helping them in terms of their allergic problems, that you're stimulating their immune system to be healthy.
It was a fascinating study that came out a few years ago. It was widely published in JAMA, and it talked about how maybe our environment is too clean, and that was one of the things that they thought was contributing to all these new allergies.
That over-cleaning your house, things like that, are not good for your kids.
And kids who were brought up around.
Let them get dirty.
Some people out there like, I could get behind that.
Yeah, no,
like,
the idea.
That's all they needed to hear. They're not going to hear anything else you say. All I heard was, don't clean the house. Don't clean the house.
So exactly right. So this was a study that back then that was done, that was people who were brought up around 2 or more pets actually had less allergies, and the thought was they were exposed to dander and to the dirt that those pets brought in, and so their immune systems became a little bit more tolerant. But in this case, like you said, when you're chemically disrupting what's meant to protect you, that seal and that barrier of your skin, which is really your skin's primary function as an organ, is to keep the outside world out. So when you disrupt that natural defense, then you have them in contact with these allergens, it's worse. So actually not necessarily conflicting, but I know it can be confusing because you keep reading these headlines, and first it's like, get dirty, then it's like, clean them up, and you never know. But I think this was very specific to the sulfates in these wipes.